to be here. I'll mess with the microphone here a minute. I see that you have already delivered half of my, so I had a couple of prepared notes. I usually don't prepare notes. Let's see, what you've already said, I can take out there and there. And then I had a standby that's that long. So I think you would probably prefer that. But the second time I've spoken to many of you in this group in the last year, and it's always an honor to be able to stand before a group of veterans and recognize you and honor you, and confess that I have a little bit of fear in doing it. It's always hard to follow yourself, particularly when I heard some good comments from the Memorial Day service, and I always feel like this is a setup. Like, can I at least live up to your expectations? And I hope I do. But I want you to think about something for a minute, because I'm going to do a little bit of what I do in church. I walk out into the middle of the congregation and I ask questions. And I try to get a little dialogue going between the folks that are there. And I want you to think about a couple of things real quick. One, I want you to think about why you went in service. What was the reason? And I want you to think about, if you had the opportunity now, if you would go back, and why. And I'll start off by saying that if I had it within my power to be able to recall you to active duty and you would go, I would do it. On every given day, when I watch the news and I see the stories of our Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard and what they're doing in Afghanistan and Iraq and in other places around the world, I'm envious. I've been there and done a lot of it, as you have. You also know that it's not a picnic. We gather today to honor you and remember those, as Steve mentioned, that did not make it home. That's what Memorial Day was about. I'm going to recap a couple of things I said then on that Memorial Day service. It said on Memorial Day we remember those who sacrificed their lives for a cause greater than themselves. And we were also charged to recommit ourselves to sacrificial living, to let go of our egos for a while and think about the greater good of our families, our churches, our communities, our nation, and the world. Those whom we remembered on that day were not victims. Sometimes we think about those who don't come back as having been victims. But they were social architects and builders in their own unique way. Artists all, in the transformation of our lives and our world. And in our journey through this life, character is everything. And character is grounded in the moment-by-moment choices that look beyond our self-interests. And we embrace the well-being of others. We remember those who went before and did not come back. Today is your day. And as Steve said, it's been celebrated since the end of World War I. That was the war to end all wars. And I think they got that one wrong. But think about a minute the sacrifice of those who are there now making their efforts known. I would like to go back. I'm almost jealous. Not for the glory, not for the combat pay. First car I ever bought was with combat pay. See, it looked about like combat too. But there are things about being on active duty that I miss. And see if you can Roger up to this. One is the friendships that you make. I miss the camaraderie. I miss the people that I served with. I remember all those that I enlisted with, and those that I served with in my first duty station. The ones that I deployed out of Boston on the USS Wasp, CBS-18, old carrier, probably shaved with it by now. Remember going to sea for the first time. And if you can remember being at sea for the first time, and if you were so lucky to have calm seas at night, at least one night, calm seas with sunset and a clear sky, and to see the sunset over the ocean. I would go stand on the fantail, and I would watch that sunset. And it was one of the most beautiful sights I'd ever seen. And I still feel moved by that. I remember seeing sunrises over the bow as we made our way into day out of the night. I remember the sounds of walking around the ship on fire watch and the sound of the ship itself. The ship is alive, you know. It moves. It has its own personality. We refer to our ships as she. Away from home, they are our mother. They are our little piece of America on the other side of the world. And when you go into Alongabo City, you've been to Alongabo City, I see some eyes rolling. Or you're in Rio, Brazil, or some other place around the world, and you get on the Liberty boat and you go back. No matter what time of day or night and level of sobriety, you see the ship, and there's always this home. That's your bed there. That's your meal ticket. That's a place when you walk back onto it, it's familiar. And then there are those familiar voices of the people that you work with. Some of them you probably couldn't stand at the moment. But as the years went on, there were several that I didn't care a whole lot about, but as the years went on, about 30 years went on, I made a choice one day to start contacting some of those people. I contacted my leading chief. Thankfully, he didn't remember much about me. I remembered more about him. I contacted a few other people and found out what they were doing. And in talking, it brought back so many memories. And that was one of the reasons, I think, that I have this fondness for veterans. Being one and remembering those who were friends. The community, the sense of community on base. How many of you lived on base somewhere? Base housing. You had somebody on the gate. There was somebody in charge. It was a nice little community. I spoke to my niece earlier this morning, and her husband just retired from the Army as an E8. We talked for a little bit about trying to become civilians again and how difficult it was. It still is. It's almost like there's nobody in charge. We look at our, sorry, Mayor. We look at our world, our civilian world, and we like the liberty and the freedom that we have, and thank God for you. You helped secure that. And that's why we're here today, thanking you, remembering what you did. Remember the people that you served with. Remember the community. I remember standing, and I served with the Marine Corps for 5 years as a chaplain. And I remember standing in Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. How many have been to Cape Bay? The former Marines here. They started doing what they call, Marine Corps has this tradition called Sunset Parade. And on Friday afternoons, right about sunset, 1 or 2 battalions would be selected, and the reviewing stands would be full. The Marine Corps band would be there, and the battalions would form up, and they would announce their presence, and then they would march by. And the band would play. And it would march by, the battalions would march by, the band would play, the sun was going down, and it was always a stirring time. see those young men and women, so young and brave and strong. That was 20-some years ago. I wonder how many of them are still with us today. I wonder how many of them we remembered on Memorial Day. And there were quite a few that I did services for that didn't survive their enlistment or their commission time. But they were willing to give everything they had. I'm going to ask you now, I'm going to walk out. Hope you can hear me. I do this at church. And somebody needs to be brave enough to be the first. Why did you go in?
Number 277.
That was your number. That was one.
Number 20 on the lottery. U.S. Navy.
U.S. Navy. Yeah.
I'll tell you why I jumped up real quick in a moment. First of all, I was in college having a great time. After a year and a half, I was having such a great time that it became necessary for me to find something else to do. I only had two choices. One of them was to go to work and the other one was to join the military. Well, I also had the added incentive of at that time you put your name in the hat and you waited until they called you. And I said, well, I'm going to beat that, so I went in the military. Now I'm going to tell you why I jumped up real quick. I'm riding on the train from Richmond, Virginia down to Columbia, South Carolina to go to basic training. And sitting next to me is a guy who had already served 2 or 3 years, been out a while, and going back in. He gave me one piece of advice. Never volunteer for anything. And I will tell you, that is absolutely the worst piece of advice I've ever gotten. And the very first opportunity I had to ignore it, I did. And that's probably why I'm here today after served 25 years. So what I have found is most people in this room are like that. They didn't avoid work. They didn't avoid service. They jumped onto the task and got it done right away. Thank you.
Well, I did it a different way. I volunteered. But the way I volunteered is I was a high school graduate. I went to work at Introduced Shipyard. And I was on the Enterprise. We were building the Enterprise. And one summer afternoon, I came out. I blew my nose, and all this black stuff came out. And I said, this is not for me. So I joined the Navy, and I grew up a lot. For 4 years I was in the Navy. I became a young man. First time I went aboard a ship, I was frightened because it was so heavy. I said, how does this thing float? And it really, really blew my mind. But I enjoyed the Navy. I enjoyed the people I met. I matured and I became a young man, and I'm happy to have served.
Thank you.
$1950. I was 18 years old. I was working out in Korea. I really didn't care too much about the prospect of getting drafted into the Army or the Marine Corps. I thought that I should give service, so I joined the Air Force. Changed my life. Met my late wife while I was on active duty. The Air Force gave me training in electronics, which enabled me to go to college and get degrees in electrical engineering. And I spent the next 34 years as an aerospace engineer, which is not exactly the same as a rocket scientist. That's close.
These are great stories, Steve. Yes, sir.
I'm Ardo Connor, and after 4 years in the military college, I was convinced I was on the right track. The experience I had as a company commander at the age of 24, and most of my men in non-coms and chief warrant officers for the Second World War and Korean War, I was smart enough to take advantage of their experience. It had a profound impact on the rest of my life and led me to graduate school and on into management. I'm here today with my 9-year-old grandson who has just woken up. He came home from school the other day and told his mother that they had studied veterinarianism in school. I've been helping him to get it straight, and it's we rose the flag together, and he stood at attention and saluted, and I felt real good.
Time for a couple more.
I guess I should stand up. In 1960, my friends were all getting in trouble. Getting kicked out of school. Going to jail. I didn't want that. I was raised down in Georgia and Florida, around the water. So naturally, I joined the Navy. I loved it. And then I got married. And they wanted me to go back to Vietnam. I chose to stay at home with my family. I've never regretted either decision.
There are so many wonderful stories. You were going to, go ahead.
If I may.
Stand as you're able.
Thank you. Edward Millett, United States Army. I got drafted. I just was in college at the time, got drafted. 3 days after I was drafted from Fort Wayne, Michigan, we went to California, boarded a ship, and a week later, I was at Schofield Base taking basic training in Hawaii. At that time, at Schofield, they had just finished filming in the quad next to us the movie From Here to Eternity with Sinatra, with all the great stars. It became a Academy Award winner. And we had basic training there at Schofield. And we knew we were preparing ourselves for Korea, because the terrain was similar to the terrain in Korea. I was a young man, 21 years of age. I had known about death and faced death with families, friends dying and going to funerals here in the States. I got to my company in Korea, and I saw and first faced death and faced the loss of friends. And about service, and now seeing it and seeing all the loss of life, it takes something out of you. And you as a chaplain, and I went, when I went up on Baldy, I went up on Baldy with a chaplain to visit my comrade friends. I was a company clerk. And yet I always would go to wherever we were stationed just to show them that I was part of that unit. And some of those friends I talked to, and a moment later I was identifying them because they had lost their life in the line of duty. I'm a mortician. I became a mortician after leaving service. The Army paid for my education to become a mortician.
I saw death and I learned. But I learned about the bravers, my fellow and I'll always cherish every
I got a little story, kind of humorous sometimes. I was born and raised in Yakima, Washington. Anybody ever heard that place? Way over there. Grew up in California. High school in the 60s, wasn't a good place to be. Especially if you weren't rich. If you were poor, you were getting jumped on, this kind of thing. Like the way I didn't like it. And because I was only 16, they gave me, you got to go back to school. Well, the day I turned 17, I joined the Army. My mother took me to Oakland, ran on a bus. She had a round-trip ticket. I had one. Smartest person in the world. So I got out there. Was not old enough to go to Vietnam. 17, and said, thank you. So where did they send me? DMZ in Korea. Wonderful place. 40 below zero, and you're shooting at you. Not fun. So as years progressed, I stayed 2 years old. And later on, I found out through stories that my uncles and grandfather told me about a certain soldier in my family tree, a Union captain in the Civil War. He was in charge of the ammunition dump at James River in Newport News, Virginia. And while playing poker and drinking with the enlisted men, the Confederates blew it up. So I felt I needed to stay in there and untarnish my name. I said to tell you, that's
what you do. Now, how many of you, if you were able and recall, would go back? Why? Knowing what you know now, why would you go back?
good place to be.
The right thing to do.
It's the only place I can get paid now.
Four children and 11 grandchildren would compel me to go back.
Couple more.
I have occasional dreams about being back in the service. I'm not young, I'm old. Don't make any sense. But there must be something about it that I was happy about, that I dream about.
Steve, may I say something?
Sure.
I am not a veteran. I am a member of the Wilmington Ladies T-Walk chapter of the National Society for the American Revolution. We have constitutions for everyone who'd like one. That's my plug. But I am from a long line of patriots, veterans. My husband's a veteran, my father was, my father-in-law was on Iwo Jima. And the one thing that the DAR does, we don't call you veterans, we do call you patriots, because that's what you're doing. You're serving our country and doing it for the rest of us. So I would just like to say thank you to all of you guys.
You may be called veterans and you may be retired and we may be too old to go back. But we aren't too old to tell our stories to our grandchildren and our children. We aren't too old to support those who are there now. We aren't too old to write our senators and congressmen when we see what some in Congress want to do with retired benefits. Pay attention to that. I guess this is a political plug, but it's important that you protect what you have earned. The government made a promise to us as we made a promise to them. If necessary, we will lay down our life for what this represents. Many did. But we don't want to honor war. We don't want to honor and call it glorious, because if you've been there, you know it isn't. There is no glory in watching people, young men and women, be cut down in the prime of their life. But we are here today to honor you, the veteran, and to remember and tell your story to one another. We've heard a few today. I would love to hear them all. Keep telling your stories, because it's important to keep alive whatever reason you went in. Some were drafted, some were jailhouse drafted. I had about 15 of McNamara's 100,000 in my crash crew. These were guys from New York and New York City, the inner city. These were blacks and Puerto Ricans and Italian descent. They all had attitudes. And I was a little skinny white boy out of North Carolina. I had to grow up real quick. But I even respect them because they went. We remember a war of what General Sherman, and I say that with a little, said about war, the graduation ceremony at Michigan Military Academy. He said, war is at best barbarism. Its glory is all moonshine. It's only those who have never fired a shot, nor heard the shrieks and groans of the wounded, who cry aloud for more blood, more vengeance, and more desolation. War is hell. There are no unwounded veterans. The dreams still come back. But I think we would do it again so that others wouldn't have to. And what I want to do now is recognize our services. When I call the service, if you would please stand. Army, standing, raise your hand. Navy. Air Force, or Army Air Force.
A lot of us, we recognize all the branches. But there's others, like I was in the Seabees. We got the SEALs, we got all these other special forces that, you know, we all want to be recognized, but we are all one group.
Marines. Coast Guard. I served with the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard, and my Coast Guard tour in Kodiak, Alaska was probably my best. Loved the fishing and hunting. And we did recognize our special operations groups. And I would say that the CBs are definitely special operations because they were cutting out runways with M16s on the ready. So, and the SEALs, the CBs, the Marine Recon, I saw a Swift, Silent, Deadly t-shirt over there. And one last group I want to recognize. Who in here, I don't want to say one, received the Purple Heart? Didn't learn the first time, huh? One last thought. Heroism is endurance for one moment more. How many times did you think you could not go on, but you held on? That's heroism. And to you, who are heroes, thank you.